Welcome back, everyone, to the Burn Boot Camp podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Morgan Kine, and I am so excited to introduce to you guys our next guest. She has been in pools all around the world and instilled in herself an incredible work ethic that has resulted in bringing home a gold and a silver medal from the 2016 Rio Olympics. She recently got married, got the most adorable puppy, Peaches, and is now living in Wilmington, North Carolina, not far from her hometown of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where her dreams of becoming a professional athlete began. Please welcome Kathleen Baker to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. So that's quite the intro.
Yeah, you filled a lot in a quick amount of time.
I did. So let's talk a little bit about your background and just the pathway to becoming a professional athlete. You know, that is very rare to even get to that elite level. So congratulations, number one. I know that takes a lot of hard work and, like I mentioned, an incredible work ethic. But, you know, talk to us a little bit about the early years of what that looked like for you.
I mean, my mom didn't want us to swim. My mom swam growing up, and it was so hard. It's like back in the day of like they swam so many yards. Like everyone has shoulder problems, shoulder surgeries. So she didn't want either my sister or I to swim, but she wanted us to be water safe. So we did summer league swimming.
Okay.
And my mom will tell this story to like anyone is like the first time I swam like in a summer league like meet, she was like, we're gonna have year-round swimmers because I already had such a natural ability. There was like, oh, it just clicked. And you see that all the time when you see kids learning how to swim. Some it clicks really easy for some, it doesn't for others. For me, it clicked and I loved it. Not to mention when you're 7 years old or 8 years old, of course you love what you're good at. Like it's so easy to be loving something you have a lot of passion about. But my parents didn't really have me swim year-round until I was 8. And I came out of my first practice and said, I would like to go every single day. And my mom was like, you're 8. You'll be going 1 day a week. And I was in like soccer and basketball at the other times. And I credit so much of my success in swimming to my parents and future coaches holding me back when I loved something and wanted to like give up everything for it so young, but still like almost like forcing me to still have like memories as a childhood, like going on the field trips that were overnight. Like when I easily wanted to be like, I can't miss swim practice. And my mom's like, you're 12. You can miss swim practice. Or taking family trips, missing practice for spring break, like holidays, stuff like that at a young age. I think that was phenomenal. And I think that made my love for swimming even more. So I didn't really start swimming where I only swam until I was about 12, almost 13. And that's when I honestly really noticed I have always been pretty good at it. But by the time I was 12, I broke every state North Carolina record in every event and every distance and broke two national age group records for 12-year-olds. And was like, wow, I could go to college for swimming at 12. And that's incredible. And I love it. And that's even better. So that's like when it really clicked for me. I always have wanted to be an Olympian, but I also think every kid who starts swimming says they would like to be Michael Phelps or an Olympian. And what's funny about that is that I wanted to be Michael Phelps, and then I was on the Olympic team with Michael Phelps because his career was so long.
That's awesome.
So that's sort of how it like begun for me.
Okay, so I have a couple questions coming out of that. Number one is, you know, I think about myself too, and just so many athletes that are young. I was a 3-sport athlete, and then I bumped down to being a 2-sport athlete because I wanted to focus my off season on more soccer. But Devin and I, you know, we moved down to North Carolina about 11, 12 years ago. And I have noticed a little bit different philosophy in the South than I did in the North, which was you focus on one sport. Where we grew up, it was always like multi-sport athlete. But then down here, I think because maybe schools are bigger and it's just like it's more competitive, I see a lot of kids focusing on one sport. So you mentioned around 12 is when you said, okay, soccer and basketball, it was fun, but I'm going to focus on swimming. Are you happy that you did that? Do you have any regrets? And is that kind of the norm for professional swimmers and Olympians?
I mean, one, I think to start off, norm is it can be anything. Like there's so many different paths, but usually in the teenage years, swimmers are only swimming because it's a year-round sport. There's not really like an off season. So it's pretty hard to do something else.
You can do the pool inside and outside.
So that's the hard part there. And then second, to like quitting is I wasn't like loving the group I was swimming in. I was swimming in with people my age, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to be in the teenage group because I wanted like to have harder people to work around. I needed more competition. And I told my coach, which I had no intention of doing that if I didn't get moved up in that group, that I would choose soccer over swimming. No intention of that. But I got moved up and I quit soccer.
That's funny.
And I had wanted to I like thought about it with my parents a long time, but I was getting sort of tired because I am in travel soccer and I'm like 12 and 11 going to soccer practice and games like 3 times a week. I'm in swim practice 3 or 4 times a week.
Yep.
I am like driving all over the place. I'm getting out of the pool to go to or soccer practice. And that's like a lot.
Yeah.
And that's sort of when it became, I could pick either one, like continue going down the path of travel soccer, which I was not nearly as good at as swimming, like not even in like at all, but I was athletic and fast. So I was good at soccer and wanted to make that sacrifice. And that would be like not just traveling as much as I did already at 12, but like really traveling for travel soccer and going 4 times a week. And you really can't be in 2 sports going 4 times a week in both sports in the same season. That just is like, doesn't really work well. And I was better at swimming. I love swimming more. And my parents sort of asked me like, which one do you want to do? Because you're getting great at both. Obviously way better at swimming. And I was like, well, of course, swimming, duh. Like I love swimming.
Yep.
And I loved it way more than I loved soccer. I love the individualistic side of swimming. Like the harder I worked, the better I got. And especially when
more
you're
in
young,
your control.
It is very much in your control. And as you are team sports, there's literally so much not in your control. You could have the best game of your entire life and lose. Yeah. And that's very hard. Yeah. And I think like when I'm comparing it to my other sport where I'm like, oh, there's not as many variables there. So that's sort of what made that decision and me really wanting to train with like this group of 15 to 18-year-olds and I am 12. Yeah. And I really, really wanted that. I wanted to have a little bit more competition there. And even though I moved up to that group, I did not train as many days a week as that 17-year-old did. I was still like, I remember like. You
still were 12
years old. I remember going to a meet when I was 11 on like a travel meet and these girls that are 11, 12, like how many practices do you do a week? And I said 4, which is like sort of a lot still for that age. And they're like 4 doubles. So like 4, like 8 practices. I was like, just 4. And they were already doing that at 12. Wow. And so that made me be thankful that one, like, am I doing enough for one? But then secondarily, like that I had really great family and coaches who saw talent, but didn't like overdo it because my foot was on the gas all the time. So I needed people to be the brakes for me.
Yeah. Okay. So that was going to be my second question. So what a great segue. So it sounds like you had an incredible support system in your own family, but then obviously coaches. And so when you've mentioned, okay, when I realized I was breaking records, I was like, okay, I can go to college for this. So who was in your surroundings, in your group that was kind of gunning for you? And then when did it change from college to, hey, I can, go pursue being an Olympian?
I think at 12 still, I was like, oh,
that was still your goal.
And it became very realistic. And I knew the stepping stones to get there, which is like making a junior national team, making a national team, making a world championship. Like I knew that there were steps that I needed to go. There's some people who fly on the radar and make the Olympic team and they've done nothing before that. And that's like pretty rare. Yeah. But I knew that there was a lot of things that I wanted to do. So I had the goals for ages and stuff like that. And talking about people gunning for me, but at 12, I was training with 18-year-old boys. So I didn't have anyone per se on my team gunning for me, which is hard. Yeah. And I grew up swimming in Winston-Salem and had a great coach. And I was running out of people to train with because like 18-year-olds are graduating to go to college. Like I was training with like master swimmers who were in their like 40s and I was training, my coach would get in with me sometimes and he was not fast enough to even like do my whole set.
So he's trying to like get you to go faster but you're faster than him.
So he would do like every other like 50 with me. So he'd like rest, but try to pace me or run up and down the pool for me and was phenomenal. But eventually I say like almost outgrew that team. Yeah. And there's no Olympic pool in Winston-Salem except in the summertime, which is inconvenient when I'm trying to make meets year round. In a 50-meter pool. So we relocated to Charlotte. I mean, my family got an apartment here and they commuted back and forth for me, which is incredible and was so wonderful and so grateful for that sacrifice and even more grateful now that I've reflected on that or I'm married and see like the sacrifice they made of being not together like in their marriage because I have an older sister and like one parent's at home in 2 different places. Yeah. But they always say it was so easy because of how much I wanted it and how much I wasn't just like playing around. Like I was serious about what I wanted. And that was at age like 14, almost 15 when we made that jump, and was a phenomenally great idea.
That's awesome. So on the flip side of that, did you experience at a young age or even throughout your career, people that didn't believe in you or people that were maybe a little jealous of your success? You know, being that good at a young age could probably bring out some different emotions within your friend group. Even.
I tell this to my husband all the time because he is so great. He's a Marine, played SEC football, and men don't have this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I told him, like, you don't have this. Like men are just excited when you succeed. I said, girls are mean. Like it's just a thing. And girls get jealous when you are better than them or you're succeeding. And I experienced that like my entire athletic career, pretty much like from
especially being in an individual sport, you know, where you're not really in that team atmosphere per se.
I would agree with that because you have relays, but it's not the same. It's like really, you have to really rely on someone, but it's very different. I experienced that in college, high school, and even middle school. And it was hard for me socially in school because I missed a lot of school for swimming and gave up a lot. But luckily my friends were very supportive. We just slowly didn't have as much in common because I couldn't be at school. Yeah. And I did get homeschooled starting in my 10th grade year, mainly because I was swimming and traveling so much. I couldn't keep up, and like I'm missing 4 days of math class every few weeks. Like I have no idea what's going on. Yeah. So love that, to be honest. But then at the same time, it's a little isolating, but I had a lot of great teammate friends like on my club team in Charlotte that were my like what I say swim friends. Yeah. And I had some awesome ones who were in my wedding still and have been my best friends, but there's definitely some bullying that goes around with it, especially being maybe new to a team. I'm sure a lot of athletes feel this way. Like if you are the best and you're new to a team, there's like automatic jealousy. Like people have been around the block and you're new, and everyone's like, what are you doing here? Like you're the young one. And like just little stuff like that you have to overcome and understand that the jealousy that happens is so normal for any female in athletics or even in a job. I have no idea what that culture is, and I'm not even sure how to break that. But at the same time, I hope when I have kids and if I have little girls that I teach them to not be that way.
Well, we're certainly trying our best to do that here at Burn Boot Camp with our mission to just empower one another. And it doesn't have to be competitive. You know, we can all rise together, and women can get a lot more done if they work together.
Literally,
instead of working apart.
To a choir here.
Yes. So, sorry about that. So speaking of challenge, okay, you mentioned that obviously that was one piece of a challenging part in your career, but talk to us a little bit about your diagnosis with Crohn's disease. So when did that come about, and how did you manage that along with obviously training for your career?
Very hard. And that comes also into like a little bit of the having a mean girl with that happening. I got diagnosed at almost like around 13, like just turned 13. And I have severe Crohn's disease, and I've been on plentiful medications, like in the hospital infusions. I get myself shots now. I've been around the block on a lot of different medications. I have ulcers from my esophagus all the way through my intestines. When I'm in remission, I have less ulcers. Usually like my small intestine is like the place that's the hardest to get under control. And that was really hard for me when I was diagnosed. I was like, as 13-year-old, as depressed as a 13-year-old could be. Yeah. Because I felt like my entire world was over. I was thinking to myself, like, I love swimming more than every single person I know. Like, how in the world did I get stuck with like this setback when out of my complete control, and felt like my world was crashing down, and that I also was not going to be able to be an Olympic swimmer. However, that lasted for like 4 days.
Yeah, I'm sure your parents did not let you sit in that feeling for very long.
Got over that, and also had like great coaches who were like, no goal has to change at all. Yeah, like there's not one goal that has to change. Your path getting there will change. And that was even hard for me to deal with for my entire teenage year. And when I was diagnosed, which is like my parents, like, you're not prepared as a parent for dealing with like a chronically ill child. And so when I was diagnosed and they said, you're going to take this medication, your child is, and she's going to get better. I'm on like 11 pills a day and I do not get better. And they had made the decision like originally that like, we're not going to share that. So you don't have to deal with like constant people asking you like, are you okay? Are you okay? Because they thought like, you're going to take this medication and you're going to get better. However, it was not that easy of a road. I had a very hard time getting on the right medication. And so I didn't really share my story with Crohn's. as publicly, like a few friends know, family knew, like it's my coaches knew, but it wasn't everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's even some people in my life when I did share that story was like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And obviously I had to say something. So I just said I had stomach issues because I had a lot going on. But I had to start going to get infusions in the hospital every 5 weeks, and I would miss the entire day of swim practice, obviously, because I'm 6 hours in a hospital. Sometimes I'd miss the next day if I wasn't feeling that well. And that was really, really hard for teenagers to understand why Kathleen got to miss practice for a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me because I wasn't at a place and maturity to handle those questions, which is why I didn't tell everyone. Originally, I had Crohn's, and that was really hard. Like, there was so much questions and like, why does Kathleen get to do that? Why doesn't Kathleen have to go to this practice? And it was not even malicious per se. Is like, they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And they probably still wouldn't have gotten it if I said I had Crohn's disease. And
yeah, that age is hard to comprehend what that
very
even
much
means.
like you're talking like 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like that is so weird. And like, not to mention it's a digestive disorder, and I have every GI symptom you could name I've had and do have, and didn't want to deal with like people bullying me or making fun of me or anything like that. And I'm grateful for my parents' like shield in that way, but also had to deal with a lot of questions around that. But
any like physical appearance stuff that
like
the
so
bloating and
I was like malnourished.
Yeah,
was like a big issue. People were
being
like
in a bathing suit as a female.
Yes. And I went from being like a very thin and fit child to losing 10% of my body weight in like less than a month, which is like, I'm already 100 pounds. Like, you know, it's not like I'm out here. Like,
you had the weight to lose. Yeah.
Like, and I'm 12 and 13 years old. And that happened a few times where like, it's very concerning when you see a child that you see all the time, parents, swimmers, all of a sudden drop weight. Like, you're like concerned. People thought I had eating disorders and stuff like that, but I was just like so violently ill that like nothing I ate was being absorbed. Like, I do not eat like this, but I was having to have like a Five Guys cheeseburger after school, a cheesecake after dinner, like just an Ensure drink, like because I didn't have enough calories to one, grow and to like develop as a teenager as well. So that was really hard for me a lot.
Yeah.
And that luckily was really early on in the weight that like fluctuates, and then I had to take steroids, which made my face puffy as a teenager, which is horrific.
Oh yeah.
And I had like chipmunk cheeks, and that was just like horrible, like for my self-esteem. Thank God I like love myself enough to get over that.
Yeah.
But there's like all that comes along with it that people don't see, or it's behind the scenes that's really hard, and dealing with that. And as I got older, I like came out with my like diagnosis when I made the Olympic team at 19. I had already told my entire college team. I'm in my freshman year. I told them before that because there's no way I can get through college like having all of these accommodations is what I would say. And I had a lot of support, but I also struggled with that through my entire college career. I did not do as many practices because my body like gets more fatigued than an average person. And that was a decision my doctor made for me at 17. That was like, you cannot swim like you want to. You're breaking down your body. You're not as healthy. You're getting sick. You're getting strep throat, because I was just tired, sick, and I'm immunocompromised.
Yeah.
And that was hard for people to get, as I'm sure if you've been on a team, like swimming's individual. Once you get to college, it's like team, and everyone wants you to do exactly what everyone is doing.
Yep.
And that was really hard. Or the social life of being like, oh, Kathleen doesn't have to go to every practice. How come she gets to go out on a Saturday night? And I'm like, well, I don't have to live in a bubble, guys. Like, this is not the case. And that was really, really, really hard.
Do you think that if you weren't so good that you would have been able to receive those accommodations? And also then do they care at the Olympic level about any of that? Or was it like, hey, this is the top elite level, like we don't make accommodations?
I think the accommodations were helped by how fast I was. I 100% believe that.
Because you still had to perform, right? Like regardless of the time that you missed practice or all of the things that you had against you, you still had to perform.
Unfortunately,
when it came
I
down
did.
To it,
yeah,
right?
and so like
you did perform.
Yeah, and so like even in college swimming, there wasn't like, oh, Kathleen's not doing as good as we want her to on the team. Like, I feel so lucky that I was able to succeed in a way that was never, because I can't even imagine another layer on top of what I was dealing with, being like, and now she's not swimming good.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got sick a lot in college from being immunocompromised, and that was really hard. Like, I got scarlet fever in sophomore year. Like, who even gets scarlet fever? Like, I got strep throat, didn't realize it swam, and then progressed to scarlet fever. Okay. And I just remember being like, this is ridiculous. And people being like, I can't believe Kathleen's not at practice. And I'm like, I have scarlet fever. Like, I'm like clearly not okay.
Yeah.
But that's not even if I had Crohn's disease. I think that's a natural team thing because everyone wants you to do exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. So let me ask you, with all of those setbacks, because I didn't even know that's where we were going with this conversation. Like, I had no idea that was your experience. And so, if someone's listening to this right now, maybe they're not, an athlete or they're not going to the Olympics, but they have something in their life that keeps knocking them down, right?
Yeah.
Keeps setting them back from maybe even just working out at burn boot camp, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
Maybe they've got something like that. Did you ever want to quit?
No.
Okay. So I was going to ask if that thought came through your head, like what got you through those moments where you were like, I got to keep going.
But I had a hard time, but I think like I credit so much of that. And that's like when people ask like, what's your biggest piece of advice for like kids or anyone? It's like not only like the belief in yourself, but like you really have to have people around you believe in you, but also hold you accountable. And it's like such a hard dynamic to find. And regardless of like my experiences as a female athlete, I had amazing supportive teammates and friends who were like ready to pick it up for me at any step of the way. I have an awesome support system. And so I think like if you could like take some of those things out, I wonder if I would have had a thought like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Like if you had a bad day, if someone else like is like, yeah, you're right. You should probably quit. You know,
and
then
that would
maybe in your mind you've been like, all right, then they validated it.
Yeah. So I think that's.
I say that a lot about anything, like even business and working out and like reaching goals. That's why we love the community we've built at Burn too. But I say that a lot of, if you are not surrounding yourself with the right friend group or mentors or coaches or, even if your family's not that for you, like you got to start to do whatever it takes.
It starts really young too.
Yeah, you got to do whatever it takes to get yourself away from that environment. And I know that's not always easy at a young age, even if you're out of the house, but like you still feel this pull to your parents because they're your parents or, your siblings. But if they can't support your goals and if they're not the ones that give you a swift little kick in the butt when you're feeling down, then you got to go find those people because they are out there. Yeah. They definitely are out there.
Yeah.
You got really, I wouldn't say lucky. I mean, that's the way it should be.
But I'm so grateful for that. And I've had so many years to reflect on that too. But I also have had like my parents always said like, have your moment and then get over your moment.
Then we're moving on.
And that doesn't matter if that's me like stubbing my toe as an 8-year-old or like diagnosed with Crohn's or an injury or someone hurting my feelings. Like I was saying that we do get a little bit of benefit of swimming. Like if you're having a moment, like I do get to put my face in the water with goggles on. So like people don't get to see that moment a lot of times too. Yeah. So that also helps. Like you can have your moment almost privately, publicly, and then take those goggles off and I'm ready back to being what I should be, positive, grateful, whatever that moment is. Yep. And it translates like so far out of swimming, obviously, or any sport. And I really do feel like my mindset comes from like, sometimes you're just born with it. And then also I've had like people who have been perfectly placed in my life that have nurtured that and like picked me up and supported me as well.
Yeah. So you made the team at 19, the Olympic team. So let's talk about what training looked like. What was a day in the life of Kathleen back
It's so
then?
funny. Like 19 is so different than when I trained as a professional because I'm in college. So like I still have class every day. And I finished like my exams, which I have wonderful professors and I worked really hard in school. I was like that obnoxious person participating in a 300-person lecture because I wanted them to know my name. So when I asked for an accommodation, when I needed to go to a swim meet that wasn't college related, or I needed to leave for something that was international related, they're like, of course, Kathleen, because I knew exactly who I was. Yeah. And that really helped. And I was never like the smartest, but I tell people that all the time is like your social skills and your personality and your ability to put yourself out there goes so much further than you think. Like,
I really do think our like the next generation and like my kids even, I'm always like, they're 8 and younger, so I'm constantly pushing them to talk to people. Talk to
such a great skill.
Order your own food at a restaurant. Like mom isn't going to do it all for you, dad isn't going to do it all for you, because I believe that my ability to make connections with people has helped me so 100%, much in life. So I love that message.
But so I'm like in school and then I take my exams and I have about probably 2 months at home before Olympic trials. And I did not have my best freshman year. I did not swim as well as I really wanted to. Struggled a lot with my health. One, because I got sick a lot more from being in a college dorm, immunocompromised. I went from taking online school, so I had not been in like a school setting.
You were homeschooled.
So I had not experienced like getting sick because I'm around people more.
Yeah.
So I got sick a lot more, and then just like a normal freshman struggles. Like I'm in California, my family's in North Carolina.
Yeah, big changes.
Big changes. I definitely gained some weight my freshman year, and like I feel like that's such a tricky topic in female athletics. And fortunately, I was pretty self-aware of it not eventually, but very quickly. Like I went home to train for the Olympics, and not being in like the dining hall, that type of stuff, or not being able to cook my own food. Being in a dorm is hard because you really are like limited on your decision making.
And the healthy foods that you can bring into the dorm.
And you're on your own for the first time, not to mention it. But I went home and I remember like I lost like 10 pounds, which is sort of a lot of weight, but it's not that hard when I just like cooked normal food, and I still had ice cream. I still went to Chick-fil-A. I still had all like the things that I feel like you should have balance in your life. But at the same time realized I do need to be like smaller than I am now. And I even look back at my Olympic weights, and I'm probably even 10 pounds lighter than that now, as like when I finished swimming and at the end of my swimming career. Some of that's just like growth and maturity and knowing what to do. But I remember that being hard, and I really began weightlifting, which I credit a lot of me making that Olympic too is weightlifting. And I did a little bit of weightlifting before college, and I was finding a lot of success. Went to college, and they had like rules about freshman lifting, which was tough because I'm like, I have lifted. Like I trained to be prepared to like go to college on an Olympic year. I'm already on a national team, been to Worlds, and be ready to lift. And that was hard for me. I didn't have the same like lifting program, but not even program, but the same movements that I felt successful in. And I think some of that can be mental, like when you're doing something that makes you feel strong. Yeah. Even if it's not even making that big of a difference, if you're feeling like you're getting stronger and you are like feeling stronger, then that is going to translate confidence wise. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I went home and did a lot of weightlifting, trained with my coach who had been my coach since I'm 14. And it was wonderful. He's an Olympic coach. I worked very, very hard, and it sort of like all started to come together about 2 weeks before the Olympic trials. And if you ask my coach, like 6 weeks before, if he thought I'd make it, he'd be like, no, probably not. He wouldn't have said that to me because I'm also 19, and that would have been like soul crushing. But it sort of started to come together, and I made the Olympic team in my 100-meter backstroke and have never been more joyful in my entire life. And I always felt like once I made the team, I wanted to share my Crohn's disease story, and it was just wonderful. My family's
you almost
there.
feel like weight was lifted off of you.
Yes. Yeah. They say like Olympic trials is such a horrible experience if you make the team. It's like so emotional because people have trained their whole lives to make the Olympic team, and I made it and beat out someone by 6/100ths of a second.
Wow.
And then I lived with her the next year. So that's even like a tough dynamic that you have to overcome as well, because you have a lot of teammates that you're trying to beat and a lot of like friends who you love and support so much who miss it.
Wow.
And you're like, this person's crying, this person's joyful, like this person's throwing their goggles, this person's like having the best day of their life. Yeah. So it is really, really a lot of emotions, and people say it is like the worst meet ever. Wow. Like even when you make it. Yeah. And someone told me that.
It's almost like you don't want to celebrate for yourself because you have such empathy for everybody else.
And it is hard to have that in the sport, but also it's about who swims the best that day, not who's the best ever. It's like who can really perform when it matters the most. And I think that our experience at Olympic trials as athletes, as swimmers, is so cutthroat that it makes us perform so amazing at the Olympics. It prepares us so well. Like USA swimming is very deep in terms of like competitive and athletics, that when you get to the Olympics, you're like, this is easier than what I just did. Yeah. Like we're prepared. We have a stadium of 17,000 people watching you at U.S. Olympic trials. So when you go to the Olympics and it's 10 or 12, you're like, oh, this is very similar. Yeah. So I think that that's part of the reason people are so successful in swimming, and especially U.S. swimming, is we are very prepared for like the feeling of going to the Olympics.
Yeah. So tell us about the Olympics.
It's wonderful. Like there's so many crazy behind the scenes stories that people don't see. Like the dining hall food, for example, we usually try to get pretty close to the dining hall so we don't have to walk very far. And we actually do practice walking in our lead up to the Olympics because you walk a lot more than you're used to. Gotcha. And so you have to mitigate that. So you don't just like wander around the Olympic Village as an Olympic athlete who is serious.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I can't walk 4 miles a day.
Because you don't want to like exhaust yourself.
Yeah, exactly. We don't walk in the opening ceremonies for that same reason.
Wow.
Which is like tough, but gymnasts don't do it either. And we all sit together, the gymnast and the swimmers, and we watch the Olympic opening ceremonies in our Olympic outfits. It's so fun. Cool. Every sport is in an apartment like building essentially. So you're in the elevators with everyone all the time.
So all the different, all your competitors are in the same building as you.
Only just US though. It's just all US. So you could be like with track and field, gymnasts.
So all
so it's all just US, and every big country has their own.
So you've probably made some really great relationships with other athletes.
Which is really cool just to see people's like how they're doing and celebrate for them as well. And in Rio, we're on really weird schedules because of TV. So I'm getting back to the village at like 2 a.m.
Wow.
And so it's gymnastics.
Yeah, because of the time change. Yes, that's right.
So they're having to like figure out the food situation. And the food wasn't the best option. It was pretty far from where we were in our apartment that I like ended up eating so many Uncrustables. Yeah. Like it's an Olympic sponsor and they're in like our apartment buildings. Like Chobani yogurt, Uncrustables, and like some like Special K cereal. They're like all big. Kellogg's is Olympic sponsor.
Oh, yeah. I used to work at Kellogg's.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Well, we love that because then you don't have to go anywhere for it. And I like think it's so funny. I was probably eating like 5 or 6 Uncrustables a day is like my fuel source. That's because it was just
so the real question is, do you eat them anymore?
I do. Or did you eat them out? Them. Okay. I love them still.
Every time you eat one, does it take you back to the 2016 Olympics?
Because I just like put frozen ones in my swim bag, go to the pool, and then I'd have like
that's so funny.
Yeah, it's just crazy that those are like the behind the scenes things that people don't see, and different Olympics have better food than others, and sometimes it's a convenience. Ours was just really hard due to a lot of our like timing. Like I'm getting back super late, but luckily I have great nutritionists who are bringing me great food options as well for dinner. That because dining hall is closed, even though it's open 24 hours a day, it's not the same open as it is at dinner time.
It's not like the fresh food.
No, and you're like, I just had a silver medal, like, and I have another race coming. Like I can't just like eat nothing. Yeah. So that's like a really cool part of it. And then just like the culture around, everyone thinks Americans are like in U.S. Olympic team swimming is very popular. Gymnastics, track and field, very popular. They think that it is so cool. Like the eyes are on you all the time because we have awesome gear. Like you get issued like 3 suitcases of gear, like Ralph Lauren, Nike, and then you're like team issued for swimming or track and field or whatever it is. So that's awesome. It is really cool experience.
Okay. So, it's a cool experience, but obviously it's it's a different level of mental like health and, just making sure that you are not just physically prepared, but mentally prepared to be on that grand stage. So what did you do to prepare yourself for that?
We have like sports psychologists like at our beck and call. And once you really make a world's team or Olympic team, you have like a lot of access to that. Okay. I personally have never like met with them individually, but they do a lot of talking about visualization and goal setting and preparing for that type of stuff, which is so helpful. And I'm a big visualization person, which I think helps you sort of get into the mindset so that when you walk into an arena for the first time, you're not like overly distracted by everything around you because you visualize what your plan is in place and how you want to do it from the second you walk into the arena till you finish your race. Okay. And that was super helpful for me. I also was on the Olympic team with Michael Phelps. I'm the youngest one on the Olympic team, and he took an interest in some of what we say rookies, especially younger ones, on how to handle media. Like you don't have to talk to any media when you walk in. It is not needed. Most people don't do it. Don't feel like you have to talk or stop. Yeah. Because I think it gets you out of your headspace if you're walking in to compete and people are want to talk to you all the time.
I feel like you got to be blinders
and on. A lot of people wear headphones and there's not even anything in the headphones. Yeah. They just don't want to, they want to look like they're
leave me alone.
Yep. Yeah. So that's something that was
I need to do that more often.
Yeah, exactly.
Around my kids.
It's very effective. Because people don't big headphones signal they are in the zone. Yeah. They don't want to. Yeah. And there's nothing even playing. And the second they walk in the pool, those headphones come off and then they're just I
love that strategy. Listen, as media, I don't feel like they should be bombarding you. Ask me the questions
later.
Afterwards.
Yes. It's crazy. Media can ask you anything.
I know.
But that's some of the mindset that I lived in. And I was having just the best moment moments in my life. So I had a lot of gratitude. I was seeded 12th. And after the first prelims, I was already seeded first. So I have outswam my expectations by miles. And I remember going up to the stands to see my family, which was wonderful that they're there. And I told them, like, I have accomplished already, haven't won an Olympic medal, everything I wanted to already.
Yeah. So that's like, an expectation where like you don't have that pressure sometimes.
But I also would say that there's no bigger pressure than like being in a U.S. Athlete at the Olympics. It is so expected to win a gold medal or a medal in general. And you don't want to let down, like, not like a nation, but like at the same time, everyone watching, or like, you're not ever going to really let down that small group that's around you. That's your support team. It's like that big group
the people
around
you don't even know.
No, it's like the third grade teacher who's like reaching out to you. It's like you feel like you let down all those extras, which shouldn't matter, but you feel that.
Yeah.
And I love the pressure and like enjoy that feeling. And I would like to feel it, to feel successful. When people don't want that feeling and don't perform well in that, that's when they have the sports psychologists like talk a lot about how to roadblocks and things to get over that. But for me, I channeled nerves as like, those are good nerves. It means because you care. If you didn't have any nerves, that would be a bad thing. Yeah. And so I just tried to always channel it in a positive way and tell myself, like, if I feel like this, it'll hurt less because I'll have so much adrenaline, or like that feeling inside of myself that is like your heart in your stomach. I learned at a young age to actually love that feeling, and it's exciting and it's special. So that's sort of my mental side around that swim meet. But at the same time, I journaled every day, and I'm not a journaler. I have ADHD. That's not going to be something I keep up like all the time. I wish I was better at it, but I'm so thankful I did, because I wrote down wonderful memories that I would have never remembered.
Right. Yeah. Because it probably goes like that.
Yes. And I'm like writing down like what I ate or who I had lunch with. That's and awesome. I think that honestly helped me, just having something to write at the end of the day. Yeah.
All right. So what's one thing, I'm sure you've learned a lot, right? But what's one thing that you've taken away in transition kind of into your life that you've learned just from this whole experience?
Yeah, to give yourself grace. When you swimming, sports, everything comes to an end at some point, and giving yourself grace to figure out where you want to fit in afterwards, like where you belong, what brings you joy. And I also am realistic to know that I will probably, my mom even said this to me, like, I love my family, I love my family way more than swimming, but my mom's like, you will probably never feel that joy until you have a kid again. Like, you know, like, this doesn't mean I don't love other things that I do, but there's such a deep love I have for my sport. Purpose in what you were doing. And that was, I said, like, so many people find their purpose after college. I found my purpose at 12, like, you know, and I got 12 to 25 of like joyful time of like my purpose in swimming and feeling like I was meant to do something. And she was like, you probably will not feel that feeling until maybe you have a kid, where it is your purpose to be a mom.
Yeah. I definitely can understand that as a mom of 3.
Yes, I'm sure you can relate to it way more than I can.
Yeah. So what is life like now, Kathleen?
I mean, it's wonderful. My husband is a Marine. He just got out this year, and I'm very proud of his service. And we always say, like, we're big America couple. We love USA.
That's right.
And so I'm really enjoying like getting to spend time with him, not deployed, not gone training. And we live right at the beach in North Carolina, like a house away. So we can just walk out every morning with my puppy to the beach.
That's awesome.
And we love to surf and do all of those things. And I said, like, the great thing about not training for the Olympics is, one, like the constant pressure on yourself internally, and 2, like, I'm not missing out on so many things. Like, you do not go home for like Father's Day or Mother's Day or someone's birthday. Like, you do not get that time off. Like, I got 2 or 3 weeks off a year. So, I mean, I'm going to go home on Christmas and maybe Thanksgiving, and that's it. So just being able to
have a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, it's so nice of being able to be such a part of my family who I love and care about so much, and be a part of my husband's family and my friends getting married, that I think about like, oh, I wouldn't be able to go to that if I was swimming. I can't fly and miss 2 days of swim practice, or even talking to you. This would be such a big deal for me to miss,
to get away
a day of swim practice. Like, I used to time like all my photo shoots and everything so perfectly.
Wow.
Which is tough.
Wow. So just a lot more freedom, it sounds like, that you have back in your life. Well, we're so happy that you're here doing this podcast. And I think I've heard you have a fashion blog,
I
fashion
do,
and lifestyle
yes,
blog.
yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I sort of like transitioned from being an athlete, and I had quite a bit of a following, and I was like, I feel like it would be dumb if I didn't like continue to use this in some way. And I just like have such different passions other than just swimming, but I love athletics. I love working out. I love fitness, and that's something I want to share. But I also love being a woman. Like I love being girly. I love being feminine. I love being able to share that and say like, hey, like you can be like so feminine and so girly and be such a badass in the pool.
Right.
Like, and I love that for myself, and want that to be a message like for young girls swimming. You don't have to lose femininity if you don't want to. Being great at something. Right. And not just in athletics, but in high performing work or whatever it is.
I feel that often when I became the CEO, that title often comes with obviously this male dominance.
Yes,
and
very
like
much.
this feeling like you need to walk in and own this room in a way that a male would. And obviously I succeeded Devin in CEO. So the company had a male CEO and then has transitioned to the female. And I think when people ask me that, I'm just always like, I am 100% myself. Like, and I'm a female and I'm going to own that. And I'm not going to try to show up in rooms and
not
be
you.
somebody that's not me.
Yeah,
and
you're successful for the way you are.
I think that's the same message that you have is like, you can be a badass athlete or whatever it is and be exactly who you are, whether that's, feminine or not. But.
Yeah. And I think like being able to share, as we talked a little bit before about this podcast, a little bit more deep into my life than I would not necessarily have shared while being like a professional athlete due to like repercussions of sponsors or just like your competitors seeing it and being able to be like, I cut my leg open on a bike this year, and I shared that on social media. And I would have never shared that as a swimmer because I wouldn't want people to think that I had to miss swim practice because I would have.
Like they'd use it against you.
And so it's so funny. Like it's little stuff like that I would have never even in a heartbeat shared. That would have been like hush hush. Like Kathleen had stitches in her leg. She'll be back in the water in 7 to 10 days. Yeah. Or I probably would have like broken that or something, Yeah. But it's just little things like that I feel more being able to not even just a highlight reel, but just a little bit more authentic than you're able to be.
Relatable and like just freeing.
Yes,
like people get
nice.
to see all of you.
Yeah. So it's cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If our followers or listeners want to hear more from you, where can they find you?
You can find me at Kathleen Baker 2 on Instagram, or my TikTok is Life with Kathleen, as well as my blog is also Life with Kathleen.
All right, guys, go check her out. Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
It's been
guys,
wonderful.
Make sure you subscribe. Share this podcast with someone that either is an athlete or just is interested to learn more of life as an Olympian. So thanks again. We're going to end like we always do. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
2 claps on 2. 1, 2.